Team, what's up? Got a question for you. The question is, how do you respond when nothing is going your way? And for some of you, I need to take it a little bit further and ask, how do you respond when you've done all the right things, but everything still goes wrong? You made the right choices. You had the right mindset. You made the investment. You took the course. You listened to the experts. You learned the process. You got certified. You did everything you were supposed to do, and the results were utter and complete failure. And in some cases, you ended up worse off than when you started. So what do? As I mentioned in week 1, after tearing my Achilles at the end of 2016, I knew I had to make some major changes in my life, and I spent the next 3 years going on my own personal development journey because I wanted my future to be better than my past. And I was going hard. I could see the evolution in my thinking. My confidence was growing. I learned several new skills. My fears were getting smaller. My pockets were getting bigger. My career was expanding. My relationships were growing. And the thing I'm probably most proud of, because I've always been inconsistent, was that I was sustaining that growth. I was able to establish a better lifestyle, and I can't remember being happier and more proud of myself. Things I've always struggled with were now just a part of my daily routine. And it was also in that time where I began expanding my horizons. I knew that my time as a full-time pastor was coming to an end, and I knew I had to develop new skill sets and strengthen the ones I already had. So I went back to school. I picked up a couple of certifications. I became a voracious reader. I learned everything I could about my next moves, and I had experts helping me every step of the way. Got mentors, coaches. I prepared myself financially. I prepared for what I thought would be the worst case scenario. I planned it all out. And by November of 2019, I felt comfortable enough to leave my career of 10 years to pursue my goals. And in February of 2020, that's exactly what I did. My last day at my church was February 15, 2020, and it's really hard to describe what I felt. There was definitely a mix of emotions though. When I got home, my wife and I just sat at our kitchen table and I cried. I spent my entire adult life pastoring. It's all I knew. And it was really hard letting it go. But after I got that cry out, the excitement started to kick in. I knew that there was something more that I was supposed to do, and I couldn't tell you how exciting it was to go after it. I used to play everything safe. And by everything, I really mean that. I didn't take risk of any kind. So never in a million years would I ever think that I'd be leaving my job, let alone career, to chase dreams. But unfortunately, those dreams would end up turning into a nightmare. Listen to me when I tell you this. Nothing worked out. We're talking about 3 entire years of planning. And when I say nothing, I'll go on the record and say that I couldn't have imagined being in a worse situation. But I'd do it all over again because I knew I did the right thing. And I have to say this. When you have conviction, you're much more capable of living with the results, even if things don't go your way. I was about to go through the most difficult time of my life, but because I knew I did the right thing, I never once questioned myself or regretted my decision. My official last day was February 28 of 2020, and everything went downhill from there. I spent 3 years planning my transition, and for me to find myself in the position I was in, a bunch of things, really a bunch of stuff, had to go wrong basically at the same time, and that's pretty much what happened. To this day, I still sometimes have a hard time believing that things turned out the way that they did. It felt like the history of the world was being written to make sure that I couldn't move forward. And I won't go into all of the details because I'm not looking for sympathy, and everybody goes through something. But I will say that one thing led to another, kind of like a domino effect. And I ended up in a downward spiral that took me a while to get out of. 2 weeks after officially leaving my job, as everyone knows, the world was shut down by the pandemic. And when the world shut down, my fledgling business was shut down with it. I spent 10 years getting a faithful paycheck on the 15th and the 30th. And in a matter of 2 weeks, I had no way of contributing to my household. But I had investments, so I wasn't panicking yet. But then I got sick with a respiratory virus. And it happened at the exact same time the hospitals weren't accepting non-COVID patients. So I wasn't able to get properly diagnosed or treated. So whatever it was had the time to turn into something worse. And based on my symptoms, a respiratory specialist told me later that they thought I probably had double pneumonia. I'll never know, but what I do know is that I struggled to breathe for months. So much so that I wasn't able to yawn for an entire year. When I was able to finally be seen by a doctor, I got diagnosed with 2 other health conditions, one of which sent my already high anxiety through the roof because one of them was a heart condition. If that wasn't bad enough, I ended up in court because a business partner was caught laundering money. So I lost money in a couple of investments. And of course, like everything else, my son's daycare shut down. So my wife and I had to now manage a toddler on top of me trying to recover physically while also trying to figure things out financially. And the few things that I mentioned were just the tip of the iceberg. Things got worse. Because of those setbacks, I ended up falling back into depression. I was having regular panic attacks. I was very angry. I was scared. I was embarrassed. And for a while, I was completely lost and couldn't figure out how to get back on my feet in the middle of a global pandemic. And this might seem crazy, but I feel like it was supposed to happen that way. Because if I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't be able to empathize with people who were down for whatever reason and help them get back up if I hadn't done it myself. And I'm just a regular dude, by no means am I special. And I don't feel like I'm better than anybody else who hasn't figured it out yet. All I knew is that I couldn't go out like that. And because I didn't go out like that, I wanted to make it my job to help others who were down, to show them how to be resilient, to show them how to fight, to show them how to double down when you can't go any further down, to show them how to reclaim their hope, build their confidence, and believe that somehow things are going to work out even when you feel like a complete failure. So when you have setbacks, and you will, know that you're not the only one who's been there. And you can take it from me that you can get back up. So what do you do when everything goes wrong? I'll tell you, whenever you have a setback, I want you to remember these 5 things. I call this the A5 process. The first thing you need to do is to accept it. There's a saying that the first step is the highest, and the first step in dealing with setbacks is acceptance. Setbacks are going to happen no matter who you are, but the severity of the setback will determine the level of acceptance that it's going to require for you to move on. If the setback is not a major one, then you should be able to make a few adjustments and keep going. But if you had a major setback, accepting that you've been thrown off can sometimes be extremely difficult because you have to let go of what could have been and deal with what is. And dealing with the reality of what is opposed to what could have or should have been can sometimes be really hard. Hard to the point that you may even need to grieve what you lost. For me, it was hard because I lost a business. I lost my means of supporting myself. I lost money. For a while, I lost my health. But the most difficult thing to get over was the loss of hope. When you're in a situation where you did the best you could do and your best wasn't good enough, or you just got caught in the perfect storm, sometimes you feel hopeless. I went from being on a mountaintop to being in the deepest valley I've ever been in. And it was just hard to accept the fact that things went south so fast. 2 weeks after making one of the biggest moves of my life, it just so happened that the entire world experienced an event that takes place once every century. I mean, it was just really hard. But I had to accept it for what it was. And that's what you have to do, because setbacks are coming. And the sooner you accept that you're going to face some, the sooner you'll be able to mentally and emotionally deal with them. Because sometimes it is what it is. And there's not always something you can do about it other than to let go of what could have and maybe what should have been and deal with what is. Once you accept the situation, the next thing you'll need to do is to assess the situation. You need to figure out what went wrong. Sometimes setbacks are self-imposed. Maybe we were rushing. Maybe we didn't have all the information that we needed. Or maybe we just made a mistake. Other times we have setbacks because of circumstances outside of our control. The key is to make an honest assessment and to determine what happened so you can either fix it or do whatever you can to prevent it from happening again. We assess so we can address. And that brings us to our next step, which is addressing the situation by making the adjustments. How you respond is everything. And I can't stress that enough. Your response is what's going to make you or break you. If you properly assess the situation, then you'll know exactly what needs to be adjusted to make the situation better, to prevent it from happening again, or to deal with it better the next time. Think of it like driving. We've all been on trips where there was some type of delay, detour, or wrong turn made. But when that happens, we don't give up on the trip because we got off course. We just make the adjustment. We figure out what route will get us back on track, and we take that route. Rerouting, adjusting, may take longer. We may have to change our plans. We might have to go down some roads we prefer not to travel. But if we're going to make it to our destination, we have to be willing to take whichever roads will get us there. And that's what adjustments are all about. They're about implementing the necessary changes so that you can get the desired results. And when you have setbacks, adjustments are necessary. After you make your adjustments, you're going to need to get acclimated to the adjustments that you just made. Acclimation is the process of getting accustomed to new conditions. It's getting comfortable in a new system. It's getting used to a new environment. It's settling into your adjustments. You're going to need to get used to your adjustments because you might not like some of the adjustments that you had to make. And this is where you're going to have to show some mental toughness and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because it might take you a while to get acclimated to some of the adjustments that you had to make. Because let's be honest, making an adjustment doesn't mean you're cool with the adjustment that you had to make. That's what makes change so hard. Sometimes we have to make decisions based on what we need and not based on what we want. If your setback was financial and the adjustment was to downgrade your home, which forced a relocation to a less desirable neighborhood, that would be tough to deal with. And there would no doubt be an acclimation period. Say there was a physical setback due to an accident, and now you're not able to do everything you used to do. Maybe the adjustment was to get a wheelchair. That person would not only need to get acclimated to their new limitations, but they would also have to get acclimated to others possibly treating them differently. Say there was a career setback, and the individual had to pick up a night job. There would be some huge adjustments to their schedule and no doubt to their body. They would have to get acclimated to that type of change. Several years back, I had a 120-gallon tank for discus fish. And every time I introduced a new discus, added chemicals or made changes to the tank, I had to make sure that I didn't do anything too fast because the fish needed to get acclimated, get accustomed to, get used to the new conditions. And the same goes for us. We have to get acclimated to the adjustments that we make so that we're not overwhelmed with our new situation. So whenever you have a setback, and are forced to make adjustments, remember to take your time getting used to. You got to take your time getting used to the adjustments that you had to make, because it's not always going to be easy feeling comfortable in a new situation. Lastly, once you accept where you are, assess the situation, make the adjustments, and take your time getting acclimated to the adjustments that you made. Once you've done all of those things, then you can put your foot back on the gas and start accelerating. Sometimes we have to slow down to speed up, and that's what going through this process will help you do. If you can slow down and take the time to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it, then you'll be able to speed up once you've gone through that process. So don't hesitate, just keep moving forward and allow the work to restore your confidence. Something is always going to come up, but if you accept, assess, adjust, acclimate, and accelerate, you'll be able to figure it out, get back on track, and make it to your destination. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.